All right, Tim. Welcome to Star Players Podcast. Oh, this isn't the podcast, is it? This is
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
man. So I just I want to get on here. I got AAU, my AAU tryouts coming up. I'm gonna just take the time to just speak on that in general, but I don't want to think about the questions that I would have. I want to know what, just somebody outside looking in. If you're a kid, what are the type of questions you would have
Yeah.
in the AAU program?
Um, I think the biggest question that everybody's probably well, maybe not everybody, but it's like what does your TNT bring to the table that someone else doesn't? Like everyone has a claim. Like I can get your kid to college, or I can make your kid better, or like everyone has a statement. So yeah,
Yeah.
what would be yours?
I think I grow kids in a lot of ways that they're not thinking about, like problem solving. Every team, like some of the better teams that I have, are very well educated on basketball, so they don't bicker and complain. They're constantly problem solving. They're like, "Hey, man, they're killing us on the stagger screen. Maybe we should quit chasing it." Okay, yeah, we're gonna go under. Hey, man, he's hitting threes on it. Well, maybe we should just switch. The guy setting the screen, he's not even a scorer, so let's just double team. Like every time out, every huddle is a conversation to problem solve the situation they're going through. When you have teams that aren't educated or don't understand basketball, what happens is they're just bickering because everybody's selfish. Just throw me the ball, and that's not a plan. That's just you not knowing what to do to solve what's going on. So understanding why we have the lead or what's been working or what hasn't been working, and talking amongst each other to problem solve as a group is going to help you well beyond basketball. So I use basketball to really educate kids so they don't get frustrated. They just think, hey, what do I have to do or what do I have to become more of to deal with this situation?
Yeah, that's like a real thing too. Like when you're playing someone that's better than you, at a certain level, it's no longer that they're just the better athlete than you. It's that they're almost playing a different sport. Like
Mhm.
when I'm trying to guard someone in basketball that knows basketball, I'm trying to score or stop them from scoring. They're trying to attack my back foot. They're trying to make sure that all of their shots come from high percentage areas. Like they're actually thinking it's like the objective is winning, but they have like six goals that come
Yeah.
before it that the average basketball player isn't thinking about. And it sounds like that's what you're like
Oh,
saying.
yeah, for sure. Having a plan is super important. I and there was a time where I was a player where I didn't know what I know now, and I would just use my quickness or whatever it was, and I could still remember it like yesterday. We played Kevin Bell at Fresno State. He's a smaller guard. He was really good defensively. He wouldn't let me get in the lane off the bounce. And then one time I came down court, I caught it in triple threat and went by him pretty easily. And I look back at games like that and I'm like, man, if I knew what I knew now, I would have got off the ball as the point guard, recaught it in the half court, and made him guard me out of triple threat versus to keep trying to do it how I typically got by players. So just being able to think through the game helps you, and that's what I'm trying to get kids to understand. It's like, look, eventually you get to a level where the only thing that separates you is what's up here. And I think a lot of parents make the mistake of I think a lot of parents make the mistake of they're focused on the outcomes instead of the process. Like the process is boring, it's tedious, it might equate to more losing than winning first. But if you go through the process, now you're going to be equipped to be able to deal with all these other things that's going to be thrown at you. Whereas if you're looking for outcomes, you just go to the biggest, best, fastest team that presses everybody and wins games, but you haven't gained any skills in and of yourself. You're just on a winning team. And so I think that's a mistake a lot of players make and a lot of parents let their players make instead of focusing on the team or the group that's going to grow them as an individual, they focus on what team is going to win the most. And that has nothing to do with your own development.
Yeah. Nah, I think that's true. Like, would you say that that's like when somebody doesn't have long-term goals, they end up making their goals short-term goals? Because that's what it sounds like. When you hear somebody that says, I just want to win, I just want to be on the winning team, it's like if you
Yeah.
want to go to college, then one of the things you might sacrifice at a younger age is the winning team for the team that can actually make you a better college athlete? Like, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, when you look at a really good player, you're looking at somebody who's able to micro down things. So it's one thing to work on shooting. It's another thing to work on making sure it comes off these two fingers last. Or it's another thing to say, I'm going to look at the middle clip on the rim. Like that's a different level of detail. So the best players are able to do things, let's say boring things longer, and they're able to micro things down and isolate skills. So like if I want to get better at shooting with better arc, I'll just practice tossing my elbow out only. That's the only drill I'm focused on. And you could do that for 30 minutes to an hour possibly and grow from that. So like that's one of the things that you see for more wiser players is they isolate the skill that they're struggling with and then they fix it.
Yeah, nah, that's a good philosophy, I think.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So when it comes to this is, I guess, a weird question, but I've seen it at the game, so I'm curious if you've ever kept a stat of this. But like, how many teams have you beaten and they never realized why they lost to you?
Oh man. Yeah. Well, it's funny because you coach your players to be, hey, if they do this, then you do that. And I think most coaching is done like, we're just doing this. Well, that only works if you're the best athlete. So the coaches that think that way, they think that there's a simple way, not understanding that we're reading you. We're making decisions based off where you go and what you do. And so most teams, most teams we played don't understand that had you ran out to us, we would have just thrown it here inside. And since you didn't rush out at us, we shot the three. And the coach is mad at the players when really they just don't know enough. And so that happens more than you think.
Mm,
It's actually kind of funny because our kids, they're at the point where they realize like they come to the timeout, man, they they think we're running this play just so we can curl such and such to the basket. When really they just don't have any weak side help. And it's just funny when you find out the kids pretty much know more than the coach because of the way uh they've been conditioned to train and think the game.
yeah, I don't think people value that enough. Like, it's the idea that it's one thing to have a brilliant coach and then athletic players. It's another thing to have athletes that can think like coaches. That's a
Oh yeah.
very dangerous thing. Like, because that's what college is. Like, everybody, and I can only say this about football, but it's like when you were in high school, your high school ran cover two, cover three, or man. Like, that was how you knew when you played this school, that was what they were going to do. When you went
Hmm.
to college, it was understood that every team you played was capable of all three. They might have had a strength or a weakness, but you never came to a game and just knew this is what they do. Like,
Right.
and I think
Right.
that's a huge difference is if you can teach that earlier in kids, the idea that I'm going to be a coach instead of a player,
Yeah.
then yeah.
And I don't think kids understand how valuable that is. Like when you can communicate what you know. I mean, you think of it as a job. In my business, if we have a meeting and I have somebody who's just waiting for me to come up with all the ideas, that person isn't that valuable. But if I have a person that comes in and says, "Hey, look, the gym is available from 2 to 5. Why don't we start an agility class?" And I'm like, "Oh, I hadn't thought of that." That person is valuable. And
Right.
that's some of the things that you're learning in basketball and in sports. It's like, okay, you're on the field, I'm off of it, or you're on the court, I'm off of it. So now, what are you guys seeing out there? Because I'm not on the court anymore. So when you can teach kids to know what you know and hopefully beyond, because you want to enable kids to be able to think for themselves, then you have a really good team because when they come off, they're like, "Hey, coach, every time we come off the pick and roll, they're jamming and the guy's doing this. He's on the court. He knows that." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, good. You recognize what they're trying to do. I have the information to fix it. I just didn't realize they were doing that." So having multiple players that can give you ideas and thoughts. I mean, what would be really cool is, and I wish I had done this, is if you could mic up our huddles. If people could hear the huddles coming from these 8th, ninth, 10th, 11th graders, they'll be really amazed. And that's what I try to tell parents to look at once their kid starts training and practicing with me is that, hey, first you're going to hear your kid, his talking saying, "I got ball, I got basket," which is typical. But
Right.
then you hear a kid saying, "Hey, help the helper. Hey, hey, that's a stagger screen. Chase it." When you start hearing things like that, make sure you tag. Now you start hearing your kids say more things and understand that, okay, I see the growth because it always shows up here before it ever shows up on the court. And
Yeah.
that's something I think parents should look for when they're looking for a team or when they're on the team. How educated is my kid becoming?
Yeah. Nah, that's a huge value. And I think that's another thing that this type of AAU that you're doing brings value to, because not every kid is going to the league. This, I still think, is the best way to give them that chance. But everyone knows the stats. Even if you don't know the stats, you know everybody isn't getting there. But the
Right.
idea is, for those who make it, this is the best thing possible because you've got the mentality you're going to need at the next level. For those
Mhm.
who don't, this is probably still the best thing because this is the only program that I hear that's consistently trying to make basketball about life.
Yeah.
Because if you're the kind of person that can just say all of these basic things on the court, hey, I got ball. That's the same as saying, hey, I showed up to work on time. Like, to me, it's like those are the expectations of basketball, play defense. But when you can say, hey, that's a stagger screen, that's this and that, that's like saying, hey, we have a deadline in April. And unless we ramp up our marketing or like,
Mhm.
once you say something, once you know that you have to bring more to the table as a human being than just what's expected, like once that becomes your standard, that transcends basketball. Like, and it's like,
Yep.
for the parent that's thinking, maybe my kid's going to make it, maybe he doesn't, this is the thought that sells it for me is this is good either way.
Yeah.
Like, this is a win regardless how we're taking it. So I just think
Yeah.
that's its own value.
And and especially youth sports, especially. I mean, all this should be an investment. After you spend all your AU money and whatever you did to grow your kid in a sport, what was the investment in it all? Was it we won 30 games, or was it the fact that my kid learned to problem solve? He learned discipline, he learned routines. Like these are all things that are going to help you because when you get in the real world, I mean, I like kids to like fight for playing time. I don't like kids to inherit playing time. I want them to earn it because the guy who gets the promotion is the guy who's selling the most whatever's being sold.
Mhm.
Whoever's booking the most clients, whoever's doing that, you got to compete, and teaching kids how to compete and discipline themselves to get better or more results than the next guy. All that comes from sports, from competition. But
Yeah.
when you give kid something and he gets something for nothing, he doesn't have a skill or learn a skill. So I really try to make sure kids aren't using just their God-given ability. And I get it. It's tough. Like when you're talented, most of the kids that kind of go on and play somewhere else or do something is because they come in, everybody's telling them how good they are, you know, and I'll say, man, hey, you're good, but man, you just don't make quick decisions. Your weak hand, that's really holding you back. How can you be the best player you can be if your right hand's at 80% and your left hand's at 40? I mean, we
Yeah.
got to increase those. And then you compare that to a coach who says, man, you're good the way you are. Man,
Mhm.
you're so
Yeah.
awesome. You're so great. Well, the kid's gonna go with the exhorter,
Yeah.
and the kids have to learn. That's you want a coach that makes you uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You want a coach that says, "Hey, look, you're here, but you're capable of being here, and I'm
Yeah.
gonna make you so uncomfortable that you're forced into this." Versus a coach says, coach says you're here and you're good the way you are. Why would you want somebody who's willing to accept a less version than who you are? Like
Yeah.
I don't understand that, but I get it because when you're young, being exhorted feels good, and they'd rather feel good versus being challenged. I think sometimes.
I think that's the funniest thing is that, like, no matter how competitive you get, if you're not competing with yourself, you're gonna fail. Cause like whatever pool you're in, you can eventually become the best in that pool and then think, I don't need to improve further. If I remember that in college. I remember being a freshman thinking, I'm gonna take that senior spot. And then I remember um, I think it was like my sophomore, junior year, but I like legitimately looked around the weight room and I thought, I'm the best one here. Like I am now. I think
Yeah.
I am. What now? Like, and it was just the idea that it's like once you peak in your little small pond, You can either compete with yourself until you find new competition, or you can cap out there. But it's like that's what I think most people are doing is it's like, are you competing? Because that's a real thought. It's if you're not competing with yourself, it's the idea that when I go to sleep at night, there's a version of me somewhere out there that stayed up and
Yep.
kept practicing. And
Yep.
he,
There's a saying about that too. It says like once you become the best at a gym, it's time to find a new gym.
yeah,
And Michael Jordan has a great quote. He says, "I don't compete with anybody. I compete with who I'm capable of."
yeah, that's
And
a real
I
thing.
love that. Say
Because
again?
just to know, like, dang, if I hadn't gone to sleep or if I hadn't played PlayStation, I know, like, it's like someone else might not pass me if I play PlayStation. Because I
Mhm.
think that's what we think is I can afford to play PlayStation because that guy over there isn't catching me this summer. But
Right.
if you thought if another version of me could come out and all I did was train all summer, that guy would beat the brakes off of me because he's
Mhm.
just me plus not quitting. Like, that's a dangerous person.
And I say that all the time. I'm okay with losing. It's gonna happen. I just can't lose to somebody because that guy was willing to work harder than I was willing to work. Like, that
Yeah,
just can't be one of the reasons for my loss. Hey, he was better than me, he's more athletic, he started sooner, things
yeah,
like that, but just because he's willing to stay up later and eat better, that just can't be a reason that I lose.
yeah. No, that's real.
Mhm.
That's really
So
real.
mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Well, yeah,
no, man, this is really good to really, talk about, you know, I I really wish like I could deliver the message on what I see. I end up explaining it to parents a lot, but I try to get them again to understand that like, hey, this is investment. Like I'm gonna teach your kid to start, you know, fighting the inner voice. The inner voice that's your reactions to things. Your inner voice is, man, I'm gonna get up at 6 a.m. Then you get up or your alarm goes off and you're like, man, it's too cold, or I went to sleep too late, or whatever. So teaching kids how to fight that inner voice means, hey man, I'm gonna write down my routine for tomorrow today,
yeah,
and I'm gonna do what I said I'm gonna do on this routine on this paper.
yeah,
And the people who can consistently do that are the people that are gonna have more success. I mean, that's just how it works. So it's like, hey, my alarm goes off, I'm getting up
yeah,
and I'm learning to fight this inner voice. And the way you fight it is through routines and competing with that routine. Make sure it never beats you. And then if you don't want to lose your mind by, let's say, waking up every day or eating perfect foods, then you write it down. You say, hey, for 5 straight days, I'm gonna do this. And then on the sixth day, I'm gonna have a cheat meal or I'm gonna do something so I don't lose my mind. But now
mm,
you've planned, what's gonna happen and it didn't just creep up on you. And
yeah,
fighting that and learning that is necessary.
yeah. Nah, and I think that's a big thing because whether you're making that about sports, faith, life, or just skills, at some point you want your inner voice to become that outer voice. Because if it's your inner voice, it means it's the thing most natural to you.
Yep.
And it's
Yep.
like, so right now the idea is, hey, you need to wake up early to get to practice. And it's like, but your inner voice says go to sleep. But it's like the worker says, practice is when I'll be there 15 minutes earlier than that. And
Mhm.
then somebody else says, dude, you don't want to sleep? I don't know what. Like when it becomes when laziness becomes the outer voice, you know you're doing something right. Cause
Yeah.
it's like,
And when you first started, it's funny, like it's just a kind of a cliche. Hey, I'm gonna wake up early. There's no
mhm,
detail to it, just early. What does early mean? Like they have a lot of times you got to learn to define what early is and what success is. You got to learn like that's another part of the program that I try to hold kids to. Did you work hard? Well, what does that mean?
right.
What is success? Like you once you define something, then you can hold yourself to it. And I don't think there's enough defining. There's just the
Yeah.
word.
Nah, yeah, that's a whole nother statement. But
Yeah, I
yeah,
know.
but nah, I completely agree. If you're not going to define what you're talking about, you might as well be talking another language because two people's definitions of success vary. Yeah, pretty
Mhm.
big. So yeah,
Awesome, awesome. Well, hey, love having you on. I love talking to you in general. Always gonna threw out something new I didn't think about or add to an analogy. So I really appreciate that. But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
man, we gotta do it again. Maybe on
Yeah.
a weekly, bi-weekly, something like that.
Yep. I will quite literally be around. So no worries.
All right, cool. Till next time.